Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and I just got back from the new film Salinger. It's a documentary about J.D. Salinger, the author of such classics as Catcher in the Rye and Franny and Zoe, and is about his life and people's encounters trying to meet him. When I was a kid and in school, there would always be, if you'd read a book or you were on a certain unit and a teacher wanted to show you a documentary for educational information purposes, not for entertainment purposes, they'd often play a documentary and go, I apologize for how bad this documentary is. It's the best documentary I could find on this subject, on this author. And that's a lot of what's going on in Salinger. And I can hear a teacher in the future saying that after they have read Catcher in the Rye. The information in this film is very interesting and intriguing, and the information it's giving you is interesting, just like that documentary a teacher would play before the class and be like, here's the information, just take the information. And the information is interesting. But I feel like I should expect a little bit more than, wow, I learned something. And I think that's one of the things about documentaries in general, is people go to see a documentary, they learn something. They don't see that many movies, but they see a documentary that teaches them something. And even if it's a pretty badly made film, they're like, oh wow, this is amazing. You should definitely see this documentary. You'll learn a few things. When I look at a film, I like to think of not just the information, but how they told you that information, what the filmmaking was like. And just with the information, this film is strong because there's no other really documentary about the reclusive J.D. Salinger out there. So this film has a uniqueness about it, and that's why people would want to see it. But the filmmaking about it is pretty poor, and especially for someone, the director of this, Shane Salerno, I think that's how you say his name. He's an experienced Hollywood screenwriter, not an amazing Hollywood screenwriter, but he's an experienced one, and I feel like he could have maybe made a better movie, because this just looks like it was made by somebody who makes competent TV commercials. It is kind of just a few steps up from an True Hollywood Story with its reenactments, with an actor reenacting what J.D. Salinger would have done in these situations, and having that actor be on a stage with the projections of J.D. Salinger's thoughts on the screen. And it feels like a film I think J.D. Salinger would have hated. And the phrase I kept hearing about in every review of this film was, this film is very phony. You know, like Holden Caulfield, Catcher in the Rye, you get it. In this movie, they talk about why there was never a Catcher in the Rye movie, and it's because Holden Caulfield would have hated a Catcher in the Rye movie. He would have thought that was very phony. Much like Holden Caulfield, I feel like J.D. Salinger would hate this movie. There's grandstanding in it about the author. There's celebrities that don't need to be there. Like, why is Philip Seymour Hoffman in this movie? Like, I don't understand. Why is Ed Norton in this movie? Like, the literary people, they make sense. I don't get what this director's point was in doing this. I feel like he didn't really get the person that he was making a documentary about. He got the aura of this person and how great they are, and oh my god, they're a genius, but he didn't get the person. And it's like they keep talking about how J.D. Salinger really got into his characters and really lived in his characters and would talk about them like they're real people, but then it's directed by somebody who doesn't treat a real man like a real person. He treats him like a myth. It was originally supposed to air on American Masters earlier than it actually did, and it is going to air on American Masters in January, so seeing it in theaters is a little pointless if you feel like you can wait till January. It doesn't even feel like a very strong episode of American Masters. There's a part where they talk about how everyone reads The Catcher in the Rye. That was just awful. Like, there's a baby holding Catcher in the Rye. Why is a baby holding Catcher in the Rye? Babies can't read. It's so corny in some places, like a bad infomercial. And I kept feeling that way. And then at the end, and this isn't spoiling a big secret because everyone knows about this already, they tell you what all the books that J.D. Salinger had written in the secret vault that are gonna come out. Basically, the ending is an advertisement. You know, there's one thing to advertise a sequel, but this is like a straight up advertisement. They didn't even really do it that well. There wasn't someone like, oh man, and I read it. It's just like text. It's like something they threw on at the end. This film was just lazily made. They thought about, hey, we have this subject matter, let's make a documentary, but there's no more thought behind it. And although I think the information is good enough just to learn the few things you can get out of it, then fine. But part of me just thinks, maybe I should have just read a biography on J.D. Salinger. This film was very lucky because it had a plethora of information. But it almost didn't know how to tell that. The way they told the story was weird. It felt like they kept fading to black a lot and then fading back. Like, if I took notes during this movie, I bet I could have figured out when all the DVD chapters were, because they kept doing that. They'd have a segment and go, and then his love was gone, fade out. Fade back in, let's talk about the war. I don't think they organized the story very well. Like, an episode of Snapped on Oxygen is probably a lot better organized. This filmmaker was very lucky he had the information he had, because this movie can't stand on the filmmaking. It only stands on the subject matter. And to me, that isn't very good filmmaking, and that doesn't make a very good documentary. It's like the filmmaker took everything J.D. Salinger hated and everything he thought was phony and used that to make a movie about J.D. Salinger. So if you have seen Salinger and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.